Good morning, and what a good day it is. Great to see all of you here today. Today we're going to have a very special program. We'll be hearing from, and I love these words, Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Assemblywoman Deborah Glick, State Senator Liz Krueger, and then we'll welcome our exceptionally special guest, Secretary Hillary Clinton, and our own Governor Andrew Cuomo. But first, a thank you to our host, the president of this magnificent institution. Sion Bylock is here today. Let's give everyone at Barnard College a shout out. And we are joined by members of the New York State Senate and the Assembly, and Congressman Adriano Espaillat is here. How things going in Washington these days? Our borough president, Gail Brewer, and members of the New York City Council are here. Members of the governor's administration, Secretary to the Governor, Melissa DeRosa, and Counsel to the Governor, Alfonso David. And thanks to all of our advocates and leaders here today, including the members of the committee, the Council on Women and Girls. Thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, today everything changes. The long wait to formally and officially and permanently enshrine the rights of New York women into law has finally arrived. And you are joining us here as we make history to protect New York values. And like many of you in this room, this has been a cause of my lifetime. And in fact, it was exactly 25 years ago this month when I first ran for local office, and I was told by the people, the leaders in my political town, my conservative town, that if I didn't take the right to life line, I would never win a seat in office. Well, I didn't take it and I won, so. But I also lost a seat in Congress on this very issue because I had the audacity to think that contraception was a right that women should have. I'm over that almost. But the last 2 years have been tough, really tough, as we watched the rights that we fought for so long and so hard throughout our history be threatened by the administration in Washington. But at the same time, that federal assault has put a frightening spotlight on the inadequacy of our own laws here in the state of New York. And while we've always prided ourselves on being the most progressive state in the nation, there are areas where we have fallen behind. But we're going to fix that. We are going to take action, beginning here today, but you also need to know that there have been injustices among us that many people may be not even aware of. We've heard of horrific ordeals of families here in New York, like Erica Christensen and her husband, Garen, who are with us here today. Please raise your hands. And their beautiful daughter, Pepper. This couple was told that their first child would not survive childbirth. But because of the laws in New York State, they had to suffer the indignity of traveling out of state to deal with that deeply personal challenge. Today, they've joined us in our fight with their daughter, Pepper, to change the laws in the state of New York, and they're standing up with all the leaders in this room to make sure we get it right here in New York State, the birthplace of the women's rights movement. And I could not be prouder to join Governor Cuomo, the legislators who've been fighting their entire lives for these rights, and Secretary Clinton, and to work to strengthen reproductive rights here in the state of New York. And I will say that the task has gotten easier with the election this past November. When you add 7 new Democratic women to the New York State Senate, now there's 20 women And joining with our partners in government and the advocates who've been here and fighting for these causes, I know that under the next woman who's about to speak, under the leadership of the incredible Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, we will finally get the job done. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome up Andrea Stewart-Cousins.
Are we ready to change New York? Are we ready for some women in leadership? Are we ready to rock this world? All right. I'm excited. Wow. Okay, we'll start again. I want to thank my great friend, the Lieutenant Governor, who has spent, every moment just being a champion for the state, champion for the people of the state, and certainly a champion for women. So yes, on Wednesday we will be together while you're presiding, over the Senate when I become the Majority Leader. Cannot wait. And I'm excited for the partners that I will have in government. The partners in the person of the Assembly Speaker, Carl Hastie, who we know the Assembly has passed this bill time and time again with the leadership of Assemblywoman Glick, who you'll hear from. But the Senate has not been able to make anything change for women. That is over. I am happy for the partnership that we have with the governor of this great state, a governor who understands that women's rights are at the core of the progress in New York State. And I am proud to be a partner with him in moving this state forward. Please give it up for Governor Cuomo. And what an exciting time to be here with a glass ceiling shatterer in the person of our secretary, our wonderful, wonderful, should have been president. And yes, for some of us, she is, but such a path maker. You know what? She's here. She's my Westchester homegirl. Secretary Hillary Clinton. Amazing. We stand, people like me stand on her shoulders because she was with me from the very beginning when I first started running for Senate. So the fact that we're here at this moment in talking about women and the incredible progress that we're going to make is really, really important to me and to all of us. But we're not going to make this progress without the change that happened in this last election. As you heard, maybe you didn't. Let me just tell you. There are 39 Democrats. 39 Democrats making up the majority of the state Senate. 14 are women. I have 15 incredible new members. And we are ready, as I said, to make the kind of change and the kind of progress that New York deserves. I want you, the Lieutenant Governor talked about the new women who are coming. I have some of them here, about 5 of them here. I just want you to meet my members who are here in general. I want you to give applause for Liz Kruger, Senator Liz Kruger, co-sponsor of this bill. Stand up, Liz, so they can see. New senator. No time to be shy. We're not being shy today. New Senator Alessandra Biaggi. New Senator Anna Kaplan. New Senator Jessica Ramos. New Senator Julio Salazar. Kind of new Senator Brian Benjamin. New Senator Robert Jackson. New Senator Kevin Thomas. These are the people who are going to help make the change with the incredible leadership from people who get it. You know that in 2007, when I was first elected, I carried this bill. I didn't understand why women's rights were still in the homicide criminal codes. I didn't get that. I didn't understand why when we did our abortion laws in 1970, there were 12 Republicans who joined with Democrats to pass this bill. And here I was in 2007 thinking that this was just a normal thing that we codify Roe v. Wade, which happened 3 years later, and modernize our bills. I thought this was normal, only to find out, Daphne, only to find out in 2007, I did not have one Republican colleague who would codify the rights of women in the way they were stated on a national level. And that wasn't just 2007. It was 2008, 2009. I don't need to count for you. We get to 2018, and not one Republican would update our laws. So now we're here. We're here. We're here. We are here. This is only the beginning of the protections that we will have for our women, for our environment, criminal justice reform, education, the list goes on. But in January, the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, we will be making our statement. We will be making our mark. We will be saying, just as the sign say, no more time to wait. We are moving forward. We're moving forward. Don't stop us. Don't try to make us look backwards. Our children, our grandchildren deserve our leadership. I want to thank every single person here who believed, despite where we were and despite how hard it seemed to be, kept focus, kept their eye on the prize. You will reap the benefits of the work that you have done, and we will make sure that we lead the way in every good thing for women and working families, and make sure that our rights, which are under attack, will never be touched, not by a government in Washington that's misled and misadvised, but we will set the tone. We will lead the way. Thank you so very, very much. Let us get it done. Thank you. Let me introduce to you our partner in the Assembly, Assemblywoman Deborah Glick, fighting with since 2007 to get RHA done. Deborah.
The podium would work if it didn't have the extra sign. I like to say tiny but mighty.
When I attended college, abortion was illegal. I had friends who were disappeared by their families because of an unintended pregnancy. I met women who had lost the ability to conceive due to a botched abortion. As a youngster, I read about a young woman in nearby Hollis, Queens, who died from complications of an abortion because the doctor couldn't take a chance and call for help. That is why I have spent my entire adult life fighting to keep abortion legal and thereby safe. It is why, as a college student, I joined others at Queens College in 1970 as soon as the New York State Legislature repealed abortion laws, and we started an abortion referral service at college. While much has changed, the forces of repression have redoubled their efforts to deny women the right to determine when or if to become a parent. The Reproductive Health Act will move abortion out of the criminal code and into the public health law where it belongs. In addition, women will not be forced to carry a non-viable fetus to term, and a woman's health, as well as her life, will be protected under New York state law. Finally, health practitioners acting within the lawful scope of practice will be able to provide appropriate reproductive health services. Now, this has taken much more time and work than it should have. And that is why I am so pleased to thank all of the advocates who have worked so long and hard. You have worked to protect women's health and their life, and I want to also thank the advocates who also provide health services, because you have guaranteed quality health care to women in this state. As the lead sponsor in the New York State Assembly, I want to thank my Assembly colleagues who have repeatedly voted to pass the RHA under the leadership of Speaker Carl Hastie. And if I might, I would just like to acknowledge the Assembly members who have joined us, some of whom are new and some of whom are longstanding members committed to this issue. Assembly Member Catalina Cruz, Assembly Member Carmen De La Rosa, Assembly Member Reyes, Assembly Member Rosenthal, Assembly Member Seawright, Assembly Member Simon, Assembly Member Simotis, Assembly Member Otis, Assembly Member Vanel, Assembly Member Carroll, and Assembly Member Epstein. We have worked for many years, hoping against hope, that we would have the opportunity. And today I do have the opportunity to thank my Democratic Senate colleagues who worked hard to gain control of the Senate in order to protect women's health and lives. Thank you. And of course, I want to thank the governor. Governor Cuomo has consistently expressed his strong support for the RHA and his commitment to sign the bill once both legislative houses pass the legislation. It is leadership from the top that is important, and we are grateful that the governor has committed to sign this bill this month. This will be the beginning of a great session and the start of ensuring women's full equality. I have the great pleasure to introduce not just a colleague, but a friend, someone who has worked in the legislature and outside of the legislature for years, working on issues critical to women and families. My friend, Senator Liz Krueger.
Oh yeah, women's equality definitely means higher pedestals for the future. We're tough, but we're short. Well, I'm also delighted to be here with such an impressive room filled with advocates and activists in and outside the legislature who have fought for so many years to get us to the day we are almost at, the day when both houses pass the Reproductive Health Act. And I am sure we are both going to do it, and we know that the governor's going to sign it. And I want to just highlight the importance of Andrea Stewart-Cousins being the majority leader of the state Senate, and not just because it's going to guarantee us we pass this bill, but things that just a few months ago we all thought were impossible. We didn't understand how in New York State in 2018 they could be impossible, but they were all impossible. And now not only are they possible, they're going to be the beginning of our new session, and things that people weren't even willing to put on the list or dream that we could do in New York State are now going to become the possible that all of us in the Senate are going to be working for. I have amazing new colleagues. Many of them are here, and they have an agenda, some of them bigger than I had ever imagined. And I actually thought when I got into the Senate 16 years ago, I imagined a lot, but I didn't imagine as far as we can and will go. But starting today, even the day 2 days before we start session, to have a public event announcing, of course, we are passing Reproductive Health Act, and of course, it's going to become law in New York State, is so richly rewarding to all of us who have done so much work for so long. And Deborah, who just spoke, I mean, when I first ran for the Senate, I ran on a campaign of passing the Women's Health and Wellness Act, another act for women's health that Deborah Glick and women in the Assembly had passed, I think, 8 times before I ran for the Senate, but who's counting? And who would imagine that the Senate, controlled by Republicans, were so upset that that bill included the right to contraception that they wouldn't pass it? I mean, it's the 21st century, and we were still arguing about birth control in New York State. Like, oh my God. Right? But we finally got that passed, and then it's taken us all these years to get to Reproductive Health Act. But we're going to go farther. And I also want to recognize Erica and Gavin, who are here and we already talked about, but to recognize them for becoming the faces and voices of endless people who weren't prepared to come forward, who went through similar horrendous stories. Some women lost their lives because we didn't have the right laws in New York State. Many of the people who were most negatively impacted by our having bad law all these decades were the poorest women. Because everybody in here who's ever worked on reproductive health knows that if you have enough money, you can get somewhere where somebody will take care of you. But the true story of why it is so critical that we're passing this bill this year is in recognition of the fact that lowest income families, women who didn't have alternatives, had horrendous things happen to them because we have the wrong laws. So not just for reproductive health, but for so many issues that we're going to go and move on to passing in this state. I am so excited to be a part of this very big story, and I do want to thank the governor for being the leader who, hi, Pepper. You love a group, don't you? For the governor for standing up and saying we're going to get this done. And it took us a long time, and we went down some strange circuitous routes that weren't the right path, but we are here today. And again, I take this as an incredibly good starting off point for 2019 and where we can get as a state. And like Andrea Stewart-Cousins, I couldn't be happier that Hillary Clinton, who I'm pretty sure, if you count right, is the President of the United States. And Andrea just made me the Secretary of Finance, so I'm going to claim that I can count right. Okay? So Hillary Clinton, who should be our president and who's here with us today, she's been out there for women and our issues forever. Andrea talked about her being with her when she started out. I started out earlier. Hillary Clinton stood at subway stops with me in 2000 when I was attempting to run, and everyone thought I was crazy to even try. So I also couldn't be happier to have Secretary Clinton here, as well as the governor and as well as all of you. So thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Secretary Hillary Clinton and Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. Happy New Year. It is wonderful to be back here at Barnard, and I want to thank President Bylock for hosting us. And I am so proud to be part of this announcement of a bold new agenda for women's health and rights in New York. Now, there are a lot of elected officials here, and I acknowledge and honor all of them. But I do want to say a special word about the amazing women officials in the audience today. I want to celebrate them, including our Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul, our new Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, along with the many veteran and newly elected state and city legislators. You know, there's been a lot of talk recently about whether our country is ready for women leaders. Now, that really takes me back, but today I want to thank all of you for your persistence. I know many of you and can attest as to how smart, determined, effective, and dare I say, likable you all are. You're going to be doing great things together, and our reason for being here today is evidence of that. New York has a proud history of leading the way forward when it comes to women's equality. After all, it was in Seneca Falls that suffragists like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Frederick Douglass came together
to make it clear that women's rights and women's equality with men had to be the most important priority. New York was the epicenter of the fight to pass the 19th Amendment and grant women the right to vote 100 years ago next year. And not only that, not far from here in Brooklyn, more than a century ago, you had Margaret Sanger courageously working with women, and you had the very first Planned Parenthood center in the country opening its doors. And generations later, New York led the rest of the country, even before Roe v. Wade, in making abortion legal. But the struggle for women's equality is not simply something to be read about in the pages of your history books. It continues to be the fight of our lifetime. Women's ability to get basic health care, our right to make the most deeply personal decisions, is facing the most significant threats in recent memory. This administration has rolled back access to reproductive health services at home and around the world, and proposed cuts to international health, development, and diplomacy that put both women's lives and our national security at risk. And even in places like New York, which is home to some of the leading healthcare institutions in the world, we are in the midst of an epidemic of maternal mortality, which disproportionately affects Black women. I've said for a long time that advancing the rights of women and girls is the great unfinished business of the 21st century. And there is no one better to lead the way in finishing it once and for all in New York than Governor Andrew Cuomo. With the help and leadership of so many of you, New York is preparing once again to rise to the challenge. Today, so wonderfully here at Barnard, we mark the beginning of a new chapter in the fight for reproductive justice, a chance not only to defend hard-fought rights, but to actually move forward with legislation such as the Comprehensive Contraception Care Act and the Reproductive Healthcare Act. Together, New York can build on the progress that has been made in reducing rates of unintended and teen pregnancy and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to choose a method of birth control based on what's best for them, not just what's least expensive. We can protect and expand access to safe and legal abortion for all New Yorkers, because having a right on paper doesn't mean much unless you can exercise it in practice. And we can strengthen legal rights for survivors of sexual assault and harassment, because everyone deserves to live, work, and go to school in safe environments. Now, when it comes to getting all of this done, I believe the vision of the people and groups here today, the commitment of public servants in the legislature, and the courage of candidates who ran on these issues, coupled with the determination of Governor Cuomo, will prove to be an unstoppable combination. I've known the governor for a number of years now, and believe I can speak from experience as well as observation when I say that he is a lifelong champion of these rights. The Reproductive Health Act, for example, has been a priority of his for many years. And last summer, when Congress confirmed a Supreme Court justice who wants to turn back the clock on women's rights, Governor Cuomo sent an unmistakable message that New Yorkers are not going back without a fight. And he called on the legislature to pass this critical legislation within the first 30 days. And I'm encouraged to see everyone working to do just that. Now, there are a lot of critical issues that we're facing as New Yorkers and as Americans, but this issue of women's rights and access to health care is way up on the top. And I thank the governor and lieutenant governor and the legislature for prioritizing it. Yes, it is an economic issue, but more than that, it's an issue of fairness, equality, justice, and opportunity. I fiercely believe, as I said more than 2 decades ago, that human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. And now, let me introduce my friend and our governor, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How exciting is today? First, let's give Barnard and the leadership a big round of applause. Thank you for having us here today. We have our Super Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul. Let's give her a round of applause. How beautiful does this sound? Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins. A great champion, Senator Liz Krueger. Pleasure to be with the Senator. Assemblywoman Deborah Glick was a pioneer and a crusader for women's rights and LGBTQ rights before many of the people in this room were even aware of the fight. Deborah Glick, God bless you. And believe it or not, it has taken all this time, even in this progressive state, for us to have the first woman secretary to the governor, which is the highest position, Melissa DeRosa. And our secretary, Hillary Rodham Clinton, how much do we love Hillary? I love Hillary. Don't tell Bill. I've known Hillary, I'm getting a little nostalgic, but I've known Hillary a long, long time. I went down for the transition committee of the Clinton-Gore new team, new ticket. Went down to serve for a weekend on the transition committee, never came back, served until the last day of the Clinton administration, and so proud of the service because government made a difference in people's lives, and that's what it's about. And you know, in politics, everybody says, oh, I know that person. I know that person. I really know Hillary Rodham Clinton. I served first on the Health Reform Task Force. That was an experience. I have flown with her all across the country. We've gone to seminars. I've been with Hillary when we went to do emergency disaster relief in the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and people who had gone through a terrible situation. And you really see a person's character in those episodes. You see their soul and how they respond to human beings in trouble. And I've supported Hillary in every campaign and been there in good days, bad days. The depth of her character, her skill, her intelligence, her creativity, the nation made a terrible mistake, and I believe they regret it. On this issue, as most, Hillary led the way. She did it with the Paycheck Fairness Act and the Lilly Ledbetter Act and the Fair Pay Act and paid sick leave and paid family leave. She was at the vanguard of all of it. And I am so proud that she has adopted New York State as her state. One of the things, as Hillary mentioned, one of the things that I have been very purposeful about for New York is that New York should be the progressive capital of the nation. Now, period. And progressive is a new word now. Progressive, well, a young person in my office comes to me. Everybody's a young person compared to me. And said, you know, you shouldn't wear a tie. I said, why shouldn't I wear a tie? She said, you'll look more progressive if you don't wear a tie. No, in New York, we don't want to look progressive. We don't want to sound progressive. We actually want to be progressive in New York, right? You know, progressive is not a label, right? It's not a sign on the horoscope chart. It is what you do. It is how you affect people. It's the difference you make. And the history of New York, the legacy of New York, is we were the progressive capital. We acted. You look at the issue, you look at the moment, you look at the movement. It was New York first. New York, the first state to stand up for environmental rights on Storm King Mountain. That's New York started the environmental movement. The workers' rights movement started here after the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. Civil rights started here when we formed the NAACP. Women's rights here at Seneca Falls. It's not whether you wear a tie or what your sign is. It's what you do in life that matters. And we have kept that legacy alive over the past 8 years, even with a Republican Senate. It's this state that passed the highest minimum wage in the United States of America, $15. It's this state that passed the best gun safety law in the United States of America. We passed the best paid family leave program in the United States. We were the first to stand up for the labor movement when they were attacked by this administration. We're rebuilding the transportation system more than any state in the United States, period. And we have led the way on women's rights like no other state, period. Now, I learned a lesson. We passed, with the help of the Senate Democrats, the Women's Equality Agenda. It was a breakthrough, and it had 10 points. And we passed 9 of the 10 points. And the 9 points had never been done before. Pay equity, stopping sexual harassment at workplaces, removing barriers to discrimination, ending family status discrimination, housing discrimination, source of income discrimination, which is a major problem. Victims of domestic violence by strengthening order of protections, closing the DV loophole on gun control and taking guns from people who have DV violations. strengthening human trafficking laws, stopping pregnancy discrimination once for all. Those were the 9 points. There was 1 point we couldn't pass of the 10 points because the Republican Senate wouldn't pass it. What was the 1 point? Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade. Now, at that time, and Senator Cousins was there, and Deborah was there, and Liz was there, the Republican Senate said, you don't need a state law codifying Roe v. Wade. No administration would ever roll back Roe v. Wade. So help me God, this was the conversation, you remember. This was only 2 years ago. The Republican Senate says no administration would do this. It's not necessary. It's federal precedent. It won't change. From Republican senators. No sane administration would go near Roe v. Wade. They were right. What I missed was the possibility that we could elect an insane administration. And that's what we have. We have an extreme conservative agenda in Washington. It's their morality. It's their interpretation of religion. It's their interpretation of ethics. And they're going to impose it on you. Which, by the way, in this upside-down world, is a total repudiation of conservative theory. Because remember what the conservatives said, limited government. Limited federal government, because the federal government, they don't know anything. State government, local government, people's rights, but limited government. This is a weird perversion of that, where they're extreme conservative in their social views, but they're highly aggressive in their imposition of those views on states and people. Now, they elect Supreme Court justices. Sane administrations elect objective jurists who bring the law and the Constitution to the facts of a case. That's not what we just went through. They sent the president a list of 25 pre-approved conservative judges who would vote his way on his issues. That's what Gorsuch is, and that's what they say they're going to do. Kavanaugh is going to reverse Roe v. Wade. I have no doubt. Gorsuch is going to reverse Roe v. Wade. I have no doubt. So what do? Protect ourselves. Pass a state law that is a prophylactic from the federal action, and that means pass Roe, Reproductive Health Act, and the Contraceptive Care Act. We have said we're going to pass it in 30 days. I believe we're going to pass it in 30 days. And just so there's no ambiguity, we do the budget in April. I will not pass a budget until the Reproductive Health Act and the Contraceptive Care Act are passed, period. But fool me once, you're not going to fool me twice. We will pass the RHA and the CCA. We'll pass those two laws. But in this crazy political world, no one is really sure what happens. And you can pass a law today, and lightning can strike, and you could have a different political context, and they could pass a new law, which would repeal this law. So I want to take it a step further. And I want to pass this year a constitutional amendment that writes into the Constitution a provision protecting a woman's right to control her own reproductive health. We'll pass it next year. We'll put it on the ballot. We'll write it into the Constitution, and we'll be able to say we have protected women's rights in a way no one else has before. That's what we're going to do this year. Thank you, and God bless you.